right here we have.
Oh,
I know it doesn't look. It doesn't
ah,
look right. It does. It
number
looks
20 as
funny.
well. Oh,
Uh,
oh, it
Kind of
hurts.
talking about this was kind of a conversation Brody and I were having. Would you wanted to have seen Lodeiro come back? Because there were reports that came out that Seattle passed up on the opportunity to bring Lodeiro back. It's crazy to think. I would have never thought Lodeiro would have played for 3 MLS teams, 2 after us. I would have never imagined that. And it is weird. I mean, I see people in the chat commenting. It's weird to see a guy like Lodeiro bouncing around the league. I think the one
Yeah.
thing that's a little bit interesting to look at is what I said with how Sounders had the chance to bring in Lodeiro but passed up on it. And I think it's kind of interesting because we've doubled down on this whole like veteran, we got to win now type of mentality. But, I think Lodeiro, for what might have been a really cheap amount of money, we could have brought him in as depth. We passed up on it. It's kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door. Like, I just don't like how there's not consistency all around. If you're going to go with the full square unk squad, go for the full square unk squad, but don't do that. And then when you have a guy like this, who has more pedigree than the unks you decided to keep and give DP spots to, you go with them, but you pass up on this. It's just kind of like interesting conversation. I'll let Brody take the floor because we were first talking about it. And then J Ross, you can chime in after him.
I mean, it's funny because I was talking about this with both of you guys, but like the day or seconds after it came out, I talked to you guys and I was like, why don't we make this move? Like, this is a move that I wish that we would make. And then a day later comes out, oh, we could have had the opportunity to make this move. And it sounded like, from what it sounded like, is that we actually had first dibs. Kind of. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it did
kind of
sound
how
like
it came
that. Yeah.
across. I'm not going to say that if that's for sure true, but that's kind of how it came across. And to me, it's like, I just like to point back to Freddie Montero when he came back, for that CONCACAF Champions League run. Was a guy off the bench, a veteran presence, but he did contribute. Not only that, he's a icon of this club. He's our greatest ever player. So not only do the fans love him, the club loves him, but the players, like, that's good for your locker room. You have young kids who looked up to this guy, and you have, like, for example, I like to say Pedro de la Vega. Like, it would be nice to have the 10 now with the former 10 come
That
in and
connection.
kind of mentor him. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And to get him on a deal which would have been very cheap, and it's not like this. It's not nowhere near the same as when we let go Ladera, because it sounded like at that time he wanted a big role in the team, and we're just like, we can't promise you that. But at this point, it's like Uncle Ladero, like he wants to be along for the ride kind of
He just
vibe. You
wants to
know
get
what I'm
that final
saying?
payday and just kind of have that last, celebratory lap.
Yeah, and it's a guy that has been around this same system his entire career. So like, what more? It's kind of like a Kim Ki-hee signing. Like, why would you not want to make this signing? For me, it's like, what's the risk? It's a cheap deal. Like, is it like relations with the player and the club or something? Because I'm trying to figure out why we wouldn't make this move. It seems like a nice move on paper to make for a team that's playing. We say this all the time. A team that's playing in so many games. Like, a move like this helps. And I know we have guys that can play the 10. Like, De La Vega can do a job there. Ferreira can play the 10. But this is like a true backup 10. Like a true actual backup 10 for Rusnak that we could have had on the cheap. Given everything else I've just said, it's a move that I wish we made, and I kind of am scratching my head as to why we didn't make it.
One thing
Yeah,
I'll
I
say
think
on to Brody, then give the floor to J Ross. I apologize.
you're good.
Is it's kind of like I would have never brought Nico back. Personally, I think the time we let him go was the perfect time. I wouldn't have brought him back. That's fine, but it's kind of my main point here is the consistency with our moves and like what we've done. And
Mhm.
then to see we had I think what bugs me is we were offered the opportunity to get him. We're just like, nah. And I'm just like, what? Like, after everything you've done, like we've done with our moves and who we have and like this and that, like the chess pieces we put out, and you said no to this one? That's the one where I'm like, this doesn't really like this one I don't actually get. Why would you say no to? You could have said no to renewing Rusnak to a DP deal, but you were on all fours to do. When Morris and Roldan wanted the huge pay raises, you were on all fours for, and then obviously gave Morris that incentive that now he's the DP. But to bring Lodeiro back on a cheap, kind of like what you talk about with Freddie, and Freddie, I don't even want to just say for CCL when we won it. He was also a really strong player for us during that season, I think it was in 2021, like, he was still scoring against the Timbers. He was a really reliable backup for Rui Diaz or even to play with Rui Diaz. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not throwing my toys about it. I don't care. I would have personally not brought Lodeiro back, but it's like based off the if you're going a different direction, that's fine. Like, if you're starting this new era, it's just more of like, if you're done what you've done and you stuck with this 2022 CCL team, why not bring the guy that was the biggest catalyst to it, but you've kept all the other pieces that were lesser components, and I would argue bring less than what Lodeiro would bring.
My thing is too is like he still played in 34 games in the MLS last year. Like it's not like he's like some guy who doesn't touch the field. Like he played 34 games last year and he was in the role of start, come off early, or come off the bench. And it's like, would it not be perfect where even when we played this 3-4-2-1 thing that Spencer's trying to do, put him in that right side of it, cut in on his left foot, let Roldan get like I feel like he actually was like would be a perfect fit into our team right now. And as Brody mentioned, when we're playing the 4-2-3-1, he's our actual like true 10 to sub in. And I mean, 30 minutes left in a game. I don't know if there's many players in the MLS you would rather have than Nicholas Lodeiro. Because I mean, at his age, he can still go run around and be that high motor Lodeiro for 25, 30 minutes on end. And it's like, it gives me vibes to Portland a couple years ago when they had Valeri late in the game. You know, he accepted that role of he's no longer the star guy when he comes off the bench. And I just think that would have been such a cool story too, just to have it Lodeiro leave, come back, and then if we end up having a good season, Lodeiro having one last hurrah in the Rave Green.
Yeah, so I mean, if you read the way that that tweet is worded, it sounds like we passed on him, and then he then went on to sign with the Dynamo. So it was in our lap. We just said no. And to add on to what J. Ross said, like the way Odero left the club was messy. You had an
And
opportunity to even right that ship a little bit, to have him come on in a different role. He accepts it now. You don't have to pay him and promise him the game time that he wanted, which is kind of why the split happened. He was like, "I'll come back. I'll be the cool uncle. I'll come in, do a nice job. I'll mentor the kids."
it's the
Like
same thing with Rui Diaz.
it's just a shame. Like it really is a shame because he is, like you were saying, Sean. This is the unk of all unks, man. You wanted to get a team with experience. You have a guy who spearheaded the team that actually won it for us, playing in the same exact tournament among other tournaments on a cheap deal. You have an opportunity to right the wrongs that you made when the split happened. To me, it's like I don't want to like come to any conclusions, but to me, it makes me think that I don't know if Weibel has a problem with him or something, or I don't know who maybe has a problem with him, the organization, I guess. But it's like it's just such an obvious signing to make. Like I don't know why it would prompt us to pass on this. To be honest with
My
you,
thing is too is like you read the new MLS rules and they gave us and Inter Miami some extra money, you know, to help us in the Club World Cup, and it's a little bit extra money to spend. Like, why not spend it on the guy who's the reason we're in this Club World Cup and like fit like it just feels like it's too perfect to line up to be like the perfect story where we're like, oh no, it sounds too good to be true. No, next.
and like
Like
what you were saying, he's not cooked. Like the dude had double-digit assists last year playing part-time. Like he's still a good player. He's not Ladero of old, obviously, but he's a guy that could come off the bench and around a team full of good players will contribute. And like you said, we all know Ladero. He loves to run and run and run, and he still does it at his older age. To me, it's like why? What's the risk? What is the risk of bringing him back? There's virtually no downside to bringing him back at all. It's not like there's going to be some sort of like confrontation with him and Rusnak, like who's going to start. You know, his
No,
role would be
no,
clear.
Rusnak would get Vietnam flashbacks of having to play DM again. He couldn't handle it. Dude, I think Craig loves Rusnak dead ass, bro. Like, dude, Craig would do anything for Rusnak. But
But
again,
that's the
I don't want to disrespect J. Ross's guy like that, you know?
well, the thing is that like even if that's let's just say in some hypothetical world that's the case where let's not sign Ladero because we want
No,
Rusnak to be
that
there.
surely can't be true. I was just
No, it's no, no.
mocking.
I know. But I just even if that was somehow true, it's not the threat. There's no threat of him. He's clearly the backup. He would clearly be the backup. So it's not like there's any turmoil between the. It just makes no sense, and it's so frustrating because you pick the direction you want to go in with this team. You didn't want to rebuild. You didn't want to get young guys. You want to bring the core back, add a few pieces, and then get a very experienced team. That was the goal when you look at the signings that we made. And this is like to cap it all off type of thing. This is like I love Kim Ki and I love the move to bring him back, but to me this is better. In my opinion, this would have been a better move, and we didn't make it. I don't know. To me, it has to be some sort of maybe because the bridges are burnt
Burnt,
type of
yeah.
thing. I don't know. That's the only thing that I can think of as to why this move wasn't done.